The massive crystal chamber on Nexus Prime hummed with quiet energy as representatives from 47 different worlds gathered for the monthly Galactic Council meeting. Ambassador Zeth Kaller of the Vrixian Empire stood at the center podium, his blue-scaled hands gripping a datapad containing months of careful research. Honored members of the Council, Zeth Kaller began, his voice echoing through the chamber's translation system. Today we discuss the third planet of the Sol system. The species there calls themselves humans. A holographic display materialized above the podium, showing a blue and green world spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Earth looked peaceful from this distance, its white clouds drifting lazily across the continents below. Our observation teams have been studying this species for over 50 Earth years, Zeth Kaller continued. What we have discovered is most interesting. These humans appear to be naturally peaceful creatures who actively avoid conflict. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. The gray-skinned Kethmoran representative leaned forward in his floating chair. Peaceful? That seems unlikely for a species that has achieved space travel. Zeth Kaller nodded and activated another hologram. This one showed images from Earth's recent history. United Nations meetings, peace treaties being signed, and crowds of humans holding signs demanding an end to wars. The evidence is clear, he said. After their last major planetary conflict, which they call World War II, humans have consistently chosen diplomacy over warfare. They created something called the United Nations specifically to prevent future wars. They have signed treaties to limit their weapons. They even have laws about how wars should be fought if they cannot be avoided. The hologram changed again, showing human entertainment programs and news broadcasts. Scenes of humans helping each other during disasters, of medical workers saving lives, of children playing together, regardless of their skin color. Their entertainment. Media tells us much about their nature, Zeth Kaller explained. They prefer stories about redemption, second chances, and peaceful solutions to problems. Their heroes are often characters who choose mercy over revenge. They seem to genuinely believe that violence should be the last option, not the first. High Counselor Vexthara of the Dominion Council raised one of her forearms. What about their military capabilities? Surely they must have some defensive forces. They do, Zeth Kaller admitted, but even their military forces seem designed primarily for defense and peacekeeping. Their soldiers are trained to minimize casualties and protect civilians. They have rules of engagement that often put their own troops at risk to avoid harming non-combatants. The hologram now showed human soldiers distributing food to refugee camps, helping to build schools, and providing medical care to former enemies. The assembled delegates watched with growing interest. Furthermore, Zeth Kaller added, humans show clear signs of what they call war weariness after any significant conflict. They actively work to end wars quickly and seem genuinely disturbed by the costs of warfare. Many of their leaders have won their highest honors not for military victories, but for creating peace. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the orbital station New Horizon, watching the planet turn slowly below him. The space station was one of humanity's greatest achievements, a symbol of international cooperation that had been built by workers from dozens of different countries. Jake had been born after the last major Earth war, and like most of his generation, he had grown up believing that humanity's future lay in exploration and discovery, not conquest. The idea of going to war with another species seemed absurd to him. Why would anyone choose to fight when there were so many better ways to solve problems? Below him, Earth looked perfect and peaceful. The lights of cities twinkled like stars, connected by the gentle glow of transportation networks. From this height, it was impossible to see the borders between nations, impossible to tell where one country ended and another began. In Geneva, Dr. Lisa Carter was working late in her laboratory, developing new medical technologies that could save lives. Across the galaxy, if humanity ever made contact with other species. Her latest project focused on rapid healing techniques that could help trauma victims recover faster with less pain. Lisa had chosen medicine because she wanted to help people. The idea of using her knowledge to harm others made her feel sick. She had read about the wars of the past, about the terrible weapons humans had created, and she was grateful that her generation had chosen a different path. The data is conclusive, Zeph Kaller announced to the council. Humans actively avoid conflict. They negotiate instead of fighting. They choose to help others instead of conquering them. Their entire recent history shows a species that has learned to fear war and actively works to prevent it. The council members exchanged glances. Several seemed skeptical, but the evidence was overwhelming. The Zephyrian Collective's representative, General Fax Morar, spoke from his seat near the back of the chamber. If this is true, he said, his reptilian voice carrying a note of interest, then humans would make ideal subjects for incorporation into the collective. A species that refuses to fight cannot resist integration. Other representatives began to nod in agreement. A peaceful species would be valuable as workers, scientists, and support personnel. They would not waste resources on pointless rebellions or require extensive military occupation. I propose, General Thaxvar continued, that we classify humans as a pacifist species and mark their system for potential vassalage. The collective could use their technical skills, and their peaceful nature would make them easy to manage. High Counselor Vexthara activated her voting console. All in favor of classifying Sol 3 humans as a pacifist species? The vote was unanimous. 47 worlds agreed that humanity lacked the will to resist superior force. Back on Earth, President, Maria Rodriguez was meeting with her advisors about the annual defense budget. The meeting was going well because, once again, they were able to reduce military spending and redirect resources toward education, healthcare, and space exploration. The public supports the reduction, her defense secretary reported. Most people believe that our resources are better spent on improving life for everyone, rather than preparing for wars that will probably never happen. Maria nodded with satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of leadership her generation had promised to provide. They had learned from the mistakes of the past and chosen a better path forward. None of them knew that their peaceful nature had just been classified as weakness by species that measured strength only in terms of the ability to destroy. None of them realized that their choice to pursue diplomacy over warfare had marked them as easy targets for conquest. The Galactic Council's assessment was complete. Humanity was peaceful, war-weary, and unlikely to resist. The decision had been made, and the consequences would soon follow. The species that had created the concept of war, Crimes was about to learn what happened when others had no such concepts. The people who had chosen peace over conquest were about to discover that not everyone in the galaxy had made the same choice. In the crystal chamber on Nexus Prime, the meeting ended with handshakes and satisfied expressions. The council members departed, confident that they had correctly assessed humanity's nature and capabilities. They were wrong about everything. The morning started like any other Tuesday for most people on Earth. Coffee shops opened, children walked to school, and millions of people began their daily routines without knowing their lives were about to change forever. At exactly 7:23 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every radar station, telescope, and sensor array on Earth detected the same impossible thing. A massive object had appeared just beyond the moon, dropping out of what could only be faster than light travel. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee on the observation deck of New Horizon when the emergency alarms began screaming throughout the station. His coffee mug shattered on the floor as he rushed to the nearest communication panel. "Morrison here. What's the situation?" he called out. "Captain, you need to see this," came the panicked voice of Lieutenant Susan Hayes. "From the sensor station. We've got a massive contact beyond lunar orbit. It's bigger than anything we've ever built." Jake rushed to the main sensor room and stared at the displays in disbelief. The object was enormous, easily the size of a small city, and it was clearly artificial. Strange energy patterns danced across its hull, and weapon ports were visible. Even from this distance, on Earth, President Maria Rodriguez was pulled from her morning briefing by her security chief. "Madam President, we have a situation. You need to come to the Situation Room immediately." Within minutes, Maria found herself staring at the same sensor data that Jake Morrison was seeing. The room was filled with her top advisors, all looking. As shocked as she felt, "How is this possible?" she asked. "Are we sure this isn't some kind of mistake?" Admiral Peter Brooks, the head of Earth's small space defense force, shook his head grimly. "No mistake, Madam President. We're looking at proof that we're not alone in the universe. And whoever built that ship is far more advanced than we are. Alien ship, which humans would later learn was called the Worldbreaker, held position beyond the moon for 12 hours. During that time, every government on Earth worked frantically to understand what was happening. Emergency meetings were called, defense forces were quietly mobilized, and scientists worked around the clock to learn everything they could about the massive vessel Dr. Lisa Carter found, herself suddenly reassigned from her peaceful medical research to a classified government facility in Colorado. She was told only that her expertise in rapid healing and trauma medicine might be needed very soon. "I don't understand," she told Dr. Kevin Wright, her research partner who had also been transferred. "Why would medical researchers be needed? For a first contact situation?" Kevin looked at the classified files they had been given to review. "Maybe they're not as optimistic about this being peaceful as they want us to believe." The answer came at 7:23 p.m., exactly 12 hours after the ship's arrival. Every television, radio, computer, and communication device on Earth suddenly activated at the same time. The normal programming was replaced by a single transmission. The face that appeared on billions of screens was clearly not human. General Thax VOR of the Zephyrian Collective looked like a cross between a reptile and a nightmare. His scaled skin was dark green, his eyes were yellow with vertical pupils, and his mouth was filled with teeth that were obviously designed for tearing flesh. Primitive creatures of the third planet, his voice was translated into every human language simultaneously. "I am General Thax V, representative of the Zephyrian Collective. Your species has been observed and evaluated by the Galactic Council." President. Rodriguez watched the broadcast from the Situation Room, her hands gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. "Your pacifist nature has been noted and recorded," Thaxvar continued. "Your inability to wage effective warfare has been documented. Your preference for surrender over conflict has been confirmed." On New Horizon, Captain Morrison felt something cold settle in his stomach. The alien's words carried a tone of absolute certainty, as if humanity's fate had already been decided. "Therefore," Thaxvar announced, "the Galactic Council has determined that your species will be incorporated into the collective as a subject race. You will provide labor, resources, and technical expertise to serve the greater good of the galaxy." The alien's horrible smile grew wider. "You have 72 hours to surrender your planet and submit to collective rule. Any resistance will be met with the complete destruction of your major population centers. Do not mistake this for a negotiation. This is an ultimatum." The transmission ended, leaving Earth in stunned silence. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then President Rodriguez found her voice. "Get me every world leader on a secure channel, now." Within hours, humanity's leadership was in constant communication. The United Nations emergency session was called for the next morning, But everyone knew the real decisions were being made in secure bunkers and classified facilities around the world. Admiral Brooks activated protocols that had been theoretical until this moment. "We have 30 ships that could realistically be called combat vessels," he reported to the Emergency Defense Council. "The aliens have one ship that could probably destroy all of them without taking damage." In the Colorado facility, Dr. Carter was shown files that made her blood run cold. Hidden among her peaceful research projects were weapons development programs that she had never known existed. Her healing technologies had been secretly studied for their potential to cause harm instead of preventing it. "We need you to understand something, Doctor," said Colonel Amy Jackson, the facility's director. "Your government has been preparing for this possibility for decades. We hoped it would never come, but we were ready." Colonel Jackson led Dr. Carter through corridors that she had never seen before, past laboratories where scientists were working on projects that seemed impossible. "The public thinks we're a peaceful species," Jackson explained, "and we are, by choice. But choice and capability are two very different things." They stopped at a window overlooking a massive underground facility. Below them, hundreds of people were working on weapons and defensive systems that looked like they belonged in science fiction movies. "The aliens said we're pacifists," Colonel Jackson said quietly. "He said we can't wage effective warfare. He said we prefer surrender to conflict." She turned to look at Dr. Carter directly. "He's about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war." Back on New Horizon, Captain Morrison was receiving new orders that he had never expected to see. His peaceful exploration vessel was being retrofitted with weapons that had been stored in hidden compartments he had never known existed. "Sir?" Lieutenant Hayes approached him carefully. "The crew is asking questions. They want to know if we're really going to fight." Morrison looked out at the alien ship in the distance, its threatening bulk a dark shadow against the stars. "Tell them we're going to do what humans have always done when someone threatens our home. We're going to show them why we chose to be peaceful." The countdown had begun. 72 hours until humanity would either surrender or fight. The Galactic Council had made their assessment based on decades of observation. They had seen humans choose diplomacy over warfare, peace over conquest, negotiation over violence. What they had not understood was that humans had made these choices from a position of strength, not weakness. They had chosen peace because they understood the true cost of war. They had chosen diplomacy because they knew what happened when diplomacy failed. The alien general had given them 72 hours to surrender. He had no idea that he had just given humanity 72 hours to remember why they had chosen to be peaceful in the first place. The species that had created the Geneva Convention was about to remind the galaxy why such conventions had been necessary. The people who had chosen to beat their swords into plowshares were about to demonstrate that they still remembered how to forge both. The 72 hours passed in complete silence from Earth. No surrender message was sent. No plea for mercy was broadcast. The human planet simply waited, as if daring the Zephyrian fleet to make good on their threats. General Faxvor stood on the bridge of the World Breaker, his yellow eyes fixed on the blue planet below. He had expected the humans to surrender within the first day. Most species did when faced with overwhelming force. The silence was annoying, but not surprising. Fear often made lesser species freeze up. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered his weapons officer. "Target their 3 largest population centers. Make it quick and clean. We want survivors to witness our power." The World Breaker's massive plasma cannons charged with a sound like thunder. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking New York, London, and Tokyo simultaneously. The attacks were precisely calculated to destroy major sections of each city, while leaving enough survivors to spread terror in the first hour of the war. Over 2 million humans died. President Maria Rodriguez watched the attack reports come. And from the secure bunker beneath Colorado, the numbers were staggering. Entire city blocks had been turned to ash in seconds. Millions of people were dead, and millions more were injured. Around the world, humans stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens in horror. The peaceful species that had spent decades avoiding conflict, that had chosen diplomacy over warfare, that had created laws to protect civilians in war, watched their cities burn. Something changed in that moment. Something that had been sleeping for generations began to wake up. "Get me a direct line to every world leader," President Rodriguez said, her voice carrying a tone that her advisors had never heard before. "And patch me through to every major communication network on the planet." Within minutes, Maria Rodriguez was speaking to the entire human race. Her words were broadcast to every television, radio, and computer on Earth. Even the rescue workers, digging through the rubble of the destroyed cities, stopped to listen. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice calm but carrying an undertone that made even her own security team step back. "Today, an alien species called the Zephyrian Collective destroyed 3 of our cities. They killed over 2 million of our people. They did this to show us their power." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They studied us for decades. They watched us choose peace over war. They saw us create laws to protect civilians. They observed us negotiating instead of fighting. They decided this made us weak." The camera focused on her face, and billions of humans saw something in their leader's eyes that hadn't been there before. "They called us pacifists. They said we dreaded war. They claimed we would surrender rather than fight." Another pause. They were wrong about everything. The transformation began immediately. The same species that had created the United Nations and the Red Cross began to unlock technologies they had kept hidden for decades. Research facilities that had been developing medical equipment suddenly revealed their true purpose. Dr. Lisa Carter stood in her laboratory, staring at files that showed her life's work in a completely different light. Her healing nanobots, designed to repair human tissue, could be reprogrammed to target alien physiology. Her trauma recovery systems could be reversed to cause maximum damage to non-human nervous systems. Dr. Colonel Amy Jackson appeared. At her shoulder, "We need you to understand something. Humans have been preparing for this possibility since we first looked at the stars. We hoped it would never happen, but we were ready." Dr. Carter looked at the research data with new eyes. "These healing systems, they could be turned into weapons." "They already have been," Jackson replied. "We've been developing both applications in parallel for 20 years. The question is, are you ready to save humanity by being willing to destroy our enemies?" Lisa thought about the images from New York, London, and Tokyo. Children who would never grow up. Families destroyed in seconds. People who had done nothing wrong except exist on a planet that aliens wanted to conquer. "Show me what you need me to do," she said. Captain Jake Morrison received his new orders while standing in the rebuilt command center of New Horizon. The space station had been transformed overnight from a peaceful research facility into a fortress bristling with weapons that most of the crew had never seen before. "Sir?" Lieutenant Susan Hayes approached with a datapad. "The new weapon systems are online. The crew is asking questions about our mission parameters." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the Zephyrian fleet. 300 ships against humanity's 30. The odds were impossible, but humans had faced impossible odds before. "Tell them we're going hunting," he said simply. The first human counterattack came 12 hours after the bombing of Earth's cities. It wasn't what the Zephyrians expected. Instead of a desperate defense, human ships appeared throughout the solar system using stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to alien sensors. The SS Defiant under Morrison's command, materialized next to a Zephyrian supply ship and opened fire before the aliens knew they were under attack. The enemy vessel was destroyed in seconds, but not before Morrison's crew had captured its navigation data and communication codes. This wasn't random destruction. This was surgical precision applied with deadly intent. On Earth, weapons factories that had been producing farming equipment and medical devices retooled their production lines overnight. The same assembly lines that had been making hospital beds began producing kinetic bombardment systems. Factories that had been creating vaccines started manufacturing biological weapons designed specifically to target Zephyrian physiology. The aliens had made one critical error in their intelligence gathering. They had observed humanity's recent history and assumed it represented their full capabilities. They had seen the peaceful surface and never looked deeper. Colonel Jackson stood in the main command center, watching as decades of secret preparations came online. The Zephyrians studied us for 50 years, she told her staff. They saw us choose peace and thought we were weak. They never asked why we chose peace. On her screens, reports came in from around the world. Human military units were deploying weapons that officially didn't exist. Soldiers were using equipment that was supposedly still in development. Ships were launching with technology that the public had never heard of. The truth is, Jackson continued, humans didn't choose peace because we're weak. We chose peace because we're terrifying when we're not peaceful. We created laws about warfare because we know what happens when we don't have laws. The Battle of Luna Station began when a Zephyrian assault force tried to capture the moon's mining facilities. Captain Susan Hayes, commanding the station's defenses, had only 50 people against 500 aliens. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Zephyrian assault force had been completely destroyed. Hayes had used the station's mining equipment as improvised weapons, turning asteroid crushers into alien destroyers and ore processors into death traps. More importantly, she had captured several Zephyrian prisoners alive. Within hours, human scientists were analyzing alien technology, reverse engineering their weapons, and developing countermeasures to their defenses. Back on the World Breaker, General Fax Voar stared at the tactical reports with growing confusion. This wasn't how pacifist species were supposed to behave. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. How many ships have we lost? He demanded. 17 confirmed destroyed, sir, his aide reported nervously. But that's not the worst part. The humans aren't just destroying our ships. They're capturing our technology and using it against us. Faxvior's scaled hands clenched into fists. Impossible. The Council classified them as pacifists. They can't wage effective warfare. Sir, the aide continued, the humans are using tactics we've never seen before. They're not fighting like any known species. They "hunting us." The general turned to stare at Earth, the peaceful blue planet that was supposed to have surrendered. By now, instead, it was producing weapons at an impossible rate and fielding military forces that seemed to appear from nowhere. Send a message to the Council, he ordered. Tell them we may have made an error in our assessment. But it was already too late. The species that had created the concept of war crimes was about to show the galaxy why such concepts had been necessary. The people who had chosen to beat their swords into plowshares were demonstrating that they still remembered how to forge both. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy was about to learn why they had chosen to sleep. 6 months after the first alien attack on Earth, the war had become something that no one in the galaxy had expected. The Zephyrian Collective, once feared throughout known space as unstoppable conquerors, was losing badly to a species they had dismissed as harmless pacifists. Admiral Peter Brooks stood on the bridge of the newly constructed ESS Retribution, humanity's first true warship built entirely after the invasion began. The massive vessel combined captured alien technology with human engineering in ways that made it faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Zephyrians had ever built. Status report. Brooks ordered as his ship dropped out of hyperspace. At the edge of the Kepler system. Scanning now, sir, reported Commander Lisa Carter, who had been promoted from her medical research position to head the ship's biological warfare division. Detecting 3 Zephyrian installations on the 4th planet. Population approximately 50,000. Brooks nodded grimly. The Zephyrians had established this base to support their invasion of human space. Now it would become another lesson in why humanity should never have been provoked. Begin the operation, he ordered. The ESS Retribution approached the planet using stealth technology that the aliens still couldn't detect. Within hours, human landing forces had surrounded all 3 enemy installations. But this wasn't a conventional assault. The humans had learned to wage war in ways that terrified their enemies. Dr. Carter activated the biological weapon she had developed specifically for this mission. Nanobots, originally designed to heal human injuries, had been reprogrammed to target Zephyrian nervous systems. The weapon was released into the planet's atmosphere, invisible and odorless. Within 6 hours, every Zephyrian on the planet was either dead or completely paralyzed. The human forces walked into the installations without firing a single shot. Back on Earth, the transformation of human society continued at an incredible pace. Factories that had once produced consumer goods now manufactured weapons of war 24 hours a day. Universities that had taught peaceful sciences now graduated military engineers and weapons designers. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, commanded a fleet of 60 ships that had been built in just 6 months. The human shipyards were producing vessels faster than anyone had thought possible, each one incorporating lessons learned from captured alien technology. Admiral, his communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council." Morrison smiled coldly. "Put it through." The holographic image of Ambassador Zeth Kalar appeared on the bridge, but the confident alien from months ago was gone. This creature looked terrified and desperate. "Admiral Morrison," Zeth Kalar began, his voice shaking. "The Galactic Council wishes to discuss terms for ending this conflict. We are prepared to offer significant concessions in exchange for peace." Morrison leaned back in his command chair. 6 months ago, you declared war on a species you called pacifist. You murdered 2 million of our people to prove your strength. Now you want to talk? We made an error, Zeth Kalar admitted. Our assessment of your species was incorrect. We are willing to pay reparations and guarantee that no council member will ever threaten human space again. That's very generous, Morrison replied with a voice like ice. But you seem to misunderstand something. We're not interested in peace anymore. We're interested in making sure this never happens again. The transmission ended, leaving Zeth Kalar staring at a blank screen. On the planet Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session. The crystal chamber that had once hummed with confidence was now filled with panic and fear. The humans have taken 17 Zephyrian worlds, reported General Vexthara, her forearms trembling as she spoke. They're not just winning battles. They're systematically destroying the entire collective. High Counselor Mektar of the Dominion floated nervously above his chair. How is this possible? Our intelligence said they were peaceful. They were supposed to surrender without a fight. Our intelligence was wrong, Zeth Kalar said quietly. We observed their recent history and assumed it showed their limitations. We never considered that their peaceful behavior was a choice, not a weakness. The council chamber's main display showed tactical reports from across Zephyrian space. Human forces were advancing on multiple fronts, using strategies that defied everything the galaxy knew about warfare. Instead of conquering planets to hold them, humans would attack, destroy the enemy forces, capture their technology, and then move on to the next target. They weren't building an empire. They were conducting a systematic extermination. "They're using our own weapons against us," reported Admiral Klexron of the Hegemony Fleet. "But they've improved them. Human ships are now faster and more powerful than anything we can build." In the Zeta Reticuli system, Colonel Amy Jackson led a special forces raid on a Zephyrian research facility. Her team of 50 humans moved through the alien base like ghosts, using stealth technology and tactics that the defenders couldn't comprehend. The facility contained the collective's most advanced weapons research. Within hours, Jackson's team had captured or destroyed everything valuable and eliminated the 300 Zephyrian scientists working there. "Package secured," she reported to Admiral Brooks. "All research data has been transmitted to our development teams. Facilities ready for demolition." "Understood, Colonel." "Well done." The explosion that destroyed the research facility could be seen from orbit. Another piece of Zephyrian military capability had been permanently removed from the board. Dr. Carter stood in her laboratory aboard the Retribution, working on her latest project. The alien prisoners they had captured provided valuable information about Zephyrian biology, which she used to develop increasingly precise weapons. Her newest creation was a virus that could be tailored to target specific genetic markers. Every captured Zephyrian provided new data that made her weapons more deadly and more selective. Doctor, her assistant Dr. Kevin Wright approached carefully. "The Admiral is asking about deployment timeline for the new biological agent." Carter looked at the data on her screens. The virus was perfect. It would spread quickly through Zephyrian populations while leaving other species completely unharmed. It was genocide made into a science. "Tell the Admiral it will be ready within 48 hours, she said without emotion. 6 months ago, she had been a peaceful doctor dedicated to saving lives. Now she was humanity's leading expert in biological warfare, creating weapons that could eliminate entire species. The change didn't bother her anymore. The images of burning human cities had burned away her old concerns about the ethics of her work. General Faxvor, the architect of the invasion of Earth, died when his command ship was boarded by human special forces. Admiral Morrison had specifically requested that the general be taken alive, but the Zephyrian had chosen to fight rather than surrender. The humans broadcast his final moments to every remaining Zephyrian vessel in the fleet. The message was simple. This is what happens to those who threaten humanity. Within days, entire Zephyrian fleets began surrendering rather than face human attack. But humanity was no longer accepting surrenders. The time for mercy had ended with the bombing of Earth's cities. President Maria Rodriguez addressed the world from her secure bunker. Her words carried to every human settlement across the solar system. 6 months ago, aliens attacked our world because they believed we were too peaceful to fight back, she said. They have learned that there is a difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. The camera focused on her face, showing a leader who had been transformed by the crucible of war. The Galactic Council has offered to negotiate. They want to discuss terms for ending this conflict. My response is simple. The only term we will accept is the complete elimination of any threat to human survival. She paused, letting her words sink in across the listening world. We chose to be peaceful. They forced us to remember why peace was necessary. Now they will learn the consequences of that choice. The war continued, but it was no longer a war in any traditional sense. It had become an extermination campaign conducted with scientific precision and unlimited resources. The species that had created the Geneva Convention was demonstrating why such conventions existed in the first place. Humanity had awakened from its peaceful dream, and the galaxy would never be the same again. 14 months after the first alien ship appeared near Earth's moon, The war was over. The Zephyrian Collective no longer existed. Their worlds had been occupied, their fleets destroyed, and their leaders executed by human forces that had grown. From 30 ships to over 3,000, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Issy Vengeance, watching the last Zephyrian stronghold surrender. The fortress that had once been considered impregnable was now flying white flags and broadcasting desperate pleas for mercy. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the garrison commander is requesting permission to surrender." Morrison looked at the massive fortress through the viewport. It contained over 10,000 Zephyrian soldiers and civilians. 14 months ago, he would have accepted their surrender and treated them according to the laws of war. Now he simply felt nothing. "No surrender accepted," he said quietly. "Begin bombardment." The fortress was destroyed in minutes, taking every living thing inside with it. Morrison watched the explosions without emotion. This was what happened to species that threatened humanity. This was the lesson that needed to be learned by every civilization in the galaxy. On Earth, President Maria Rodriguez stood before the newly constructed Galactic Defense Council, an organization that had replaced the old United Nations. The world had changed beyond recognition since the invasion began, and humanity's leadership had evolved to match. "The Zephyrian threat has been eliminated," she announced to the assembled representatives from every nation on Earth. All of their worlds are now under human control. Their military capability has been completely destroyed. The room was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not just won a defensive war. They had conquered an entire galactic empire in just over a year. "What about the other species?" asked the representative from Australia. "The Galactic Council has been sending peace offers for months." Rodriguez smiled, but there was no warmth. "In it, the Council will learn to live with the new reality they created. Humanity is no longer interested in being observed and evaluated. We will do the observing from now on." Dr. Lisa Carter worked in her new laboratory on the space station Prometheus, one of dozens of research facilities that humanity had built throughout former Zephyrian space. Her work had evolved far beyond biological weapons. She was now developing technologies that could remake entire worlds to suit human needs. Her assistant Dr. Kevin Wright approached with the latest reports. "The terraforming virus for the Kepler colonies is ready for deployment. We can have those worlds habitable for human settlement within 6 months." Carter nodded without looking up from her work. The same mind that had once focused on healing was now reshaping the galaxy itself. Planets that had been hostile to human life were being transformed into garden worlds. Species that might pose future threats were being quietly eliminated before they could develop space travel. "Begin deployment," she ordered, "and initiate the monitoring protocols for the Centauri system. I want to know if any species there develops technology that could threaten human interests." The new human empire was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Rather than ruling conquered species, humans simply removed threats entirely. Planets were either colonized by humans or left empty. There were no vassal races, no tribute systems, no complex treaties. There was only human space and everything else. Colonel Amy Jackson, now promoted to general, established the first human intelligence service outpost in the Vega system. Her mission was simple: monitor every species within 50 light years of human space and eliminate any potential threats before they could develop. "General," her aide reported, "we've detected radio signals from a planet in the Wolf 359 system. Preliminary analysis suggests the species has developed atomic energy." Jackson studied the data carefully. The aliens were still centuries away from space travel, but they had crossed the threshold into dangerous technology. In the old days, humanity might have tried to make peaceful contact. Now they had learned a different approach. "Deploy a sterilization probe," she ordered. natural disaster scenario. Make it look like their sun went unstable. Within weeks, the Wolf 359 system would experience a solar flare that would end all life on the third planet. To any observer, it would appear completely natural. Only humans would know that another potential threat had been quietly eliminated. On Nexus Prime, the remnants of the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The crystal chamber that had once housed representatives from 47 worlds now held only 12. The others had either been destroyed by humans or had fled to distant parts of the galaxy. Ambassador Zeth Collar, the alien who had first recommended the invasion of Earth, stood before the Council with a report that no one wanted to hear. The humans have established monitoring stations throughout this sector, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper. They are watching every species, every planet, every development of technology. Any civilization that might pose a threat is being eliminated before they can become dangerous. High Counselor Vexthara raised one of her forearms. What about peaceful contact? Surely they will listen to reason now that their anger has cooled. Zeth Collar displayed a holographic message that had been broadcast to every known civilization in the galaxy. President Rodriguez appeared in the projection, her image transmitted to billions of beings across hundreds of worlds. People of the galaxy, her voice echoed through the chamber. Humanity has learned that peace is only possible when potential aggressors understand the consequences of aggression. We will no longer wait for threats to develop. We will no longer hope that hostile species will choose diplomacy over warfare. The image of Rodriguez stared directly at the viewers with eyes that had seen 2 million of her people murdered. Any species that develops weapons capable of threatening human worlds will be eliminated. Any government that considers aggressive action against humanity will be removed. Any civilization that poses a potential threat to human security will be ended before that threat can materialize. She paused, letting the words sink in across the galaxy. We chose to be peaceful. You forced us to choose security instead. Live with the consequences. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in terrified silence. Admiral Peter Brooks commanded the human patrol fleet from his flagship, the S Dominion. His ships moved constantly through the galaxy, visiting every inhabited system, monitoring every species, and maintaining the new order that humanity had created. Admiral, his science officer reported, long-range sensors had detected faster-than-light experiments in the Tau Ceti system. The species there appears to be developing warp drive technology. Brooks consulted his orders. Any species that developed interstellar travel was to be evaluated for threat potential. If they showed any signs of aggressive behavior, they were to be eliminated immediately. Deploy observation drones, he ordered. Full surveillance package. I want to know everything about their culture, their military, and their intentions before they achieve interstellar flight. The drones would watch the Tau Ceti species for months or years, gathering data on every aspect of their civilization. If they showed any tendency toward conquest or expansion beyond their own system, they would be quietly destroyed. If they proved to be truly peaceful, they might be allowed to exist under human supervision. This was the new galactic order. Humanity had become the apex predator, the ultimate arbiter of which species would be allowed to survive and develop. The galaxy that had once dismissed humans as harmless pacifists now lived in terror of their judgment. Dr. Carter completed her latest project, a monitoring system that could detect the development of dangerous technology from hundreds of light years away. The network of sensors would alert humanity to any potential threat long before it could become dangerous. The galaxy is secure, she reported to President Rodriguez during their weekly briefing. No species within our monitoring range has the capability to threaten human interests. Several potential threats have been eliminated, and the remaining civilizations understand their position. Rodriguez nodded with satisfaction. Good. And what about long-term security? We're expanding the monitoring network constantly, Carter replied. Within 10 years, we'll have coverage of this entire spiral arm. Any species that might threaten humanity will be identified and dealt with before they can pose a real danger. The transformation was complete. The species that had created the United Nations and the Geneva Convention had become something far more terrifying than any galactic empire. They had become the silent guardians of their own security, eliminating threats that other civilizations never even knew existed. The Galactic Council's final entry regarding humanity was brief and desperate. Classification: extinct level threat. Status: galactic apex predator. Recommendation: complete avoidance. Warning: they are always watching. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had done something far more effective. They had made the galaxy safe for humanity, and they had done it by ensuring that no one else would ever again make the mistake of thinking that humans were weak. The species that had once been called pacifists now patrolled the stars, and the galaxy was very, very quiet.